Carlotta will shatter your enemies like glass, and I'm going to explain to you her kit, teams, and how to build her best. So let's get into it. Starting with her kit explanation. Carlotta is a Glacio gun DPS who focuses on dealing nuclear amounts of skill damage. Her basic attack will have a standard 2-hit combo. But when Carlotta possesses malleable crystals, she will instead use her basic attack Necessary Means up to 3 times, and each attack will consume 1 malleable crystal. Now as for what these malleable crystals are, just wait until the Forte circuit, it will be explained there. Her heavy attack will be a hit of melee damage, which is interesting since she is a gun user, so she doesn't have the normal aimed shot. She also has an enhanced heavy attack, which will be used once Carlotta's essence is filled. And again, just like the malleable crystals, essence will be explained when I explain her Forte circuit, so don't worry about that. But when you use this enhanced heavy attack, the cooldown of her resonance skill will be reduced by 6 seconds. Carlotta's air attack also functions mainly like a melee character, which she plunges downward. And after her aerial attack is finished, you can cast basic attack again to cast Courteous Greetings. And why this is important, I'll explain to you later. Her dodge attack is relatively simple, but it will consume 1 malleable crystal. Now as for her skill, its initial cast will do Glacio damage and apply an effect to enemies that will make them unable to move for 1.5 seconds. After using your skill, you can cast it again, which will consume all malleable crystals to restore essence. This is not the only way to restore essence, which we will handle in her Forte circuit, which, guess what, is happening now. First of all, talking about her malleable crystals. They will have a maximum of 6 and will be regenerated in a variety of ways. You can get it with the second stage of her basic attack, you can get free from your heavy attack, you can get free from Courteous Greetings, you can get free from her intro skill, and you can get free from the initial cast of her skill, and also free when dodging an enemy attack. That is a lot of different sources of malleable crystals, which is good because malleable crystals are required to obtain essence. Essence is her Forte's meter, which is required to use her enhanced heavy attack that I talked about earlier. You can get 30 from her intro skill, and you get 10 essence for every malleable crystal that you consume, which goes up to a maximum of 120. Now every 22 seconds, Carlotta's enhanced heavy attack will be enhanced even further by giving Carlotta the color plating crystal effect. When she has this effect, the multiplier of her enhanced heavy attack will be greatly increased, and it will also still reduce the cooldown of her skill by 6 seconds. After casting this heavy attack while in the color plating crystal form, she grants herself the Unveiler effect, which will increase the multiplier of everything within her Resonance Liberation by 80%. And this effect will cancel out if you swap off of her. Now speaking of her Resonance Liberation, first it will do a large hit of Glacio damage, afterwards she will enter the Gundam state. This first hit will also apply Disassociation to enemies, which will allow Carlotta to ignore 18% of the enemy's defense. While in the Gundam state, you will be able to cast Death Knell, which will be your new basic attack. This can be cast up to 4 times. After which, the next basic attack or Resonance Liberation cast will instead be her ultimate finisher. This will do even more damage than the initial cast, and will be an insane nuke. Using this will also end her Gundam state. Her intro skill will just do Glacio damage, but it will also restore 30 essence and 3 malleable crystals. And then her outro skill will just be a large hit of Glacio damage. Our first inherent skill will make it so after casting her Resonance skill, you will be immune to damage while casting an aerial attack. And additionally, when Carlotta is in the team, the stamina consumption of any aerial movements will be reduced by 20%. Her second inherent skill will allow Carlotta to apply her Disassociation effect with a variation of other skills, being her intro skill, Resonance skill, Death Knell, and also her enhanced heavy attack, which will essentially give her 100% uptime on these abilities. For her Forte priority, definitely start with her Resonance Liberation. All of the actions within her Resonance Liberation count as skill damage, and they will be the majority of your rotation's damage output. Next up, I would level up her skill. You're using it multiple times per rotation and it has a very large multiplier, so it will be contributing to a lot of your damage. Next up, I would level the Forte circuit. You're only using this once per rotation, so it's not going to have as big of an effect as her resonance skill, but it's still a very large amount of damage that you should not be ignoring. If you're trying to save resources, I would skip out on leveling her basic attack and her intro skill, but if you have enough resources, leveling them up will not be a bad thing. Now moving on to Carlotta's rotation. You definitely want to start off with using a double skill tap before even going into any of your supports. This will allow Carlotta to restore some essence, which will allow her to get her forte heavy attack out faster when she actually enters the field. Then after you've done your support stuff, and you switch Carlotta back with her intro skill, you will be able to use your double tap skill again. Then you should plunge down and cast Courteous Greetings for Flame Malleable Crystals, but you don't want to use them yet. Instead, thanks to the 30 essence that you generated from the double skill at the beginning, the 30 essence from her intro skill, and the 60 essence from your double skill tap, you should be able to cast her enhanced heavy attack, so definitely do that. This is when you use your ultimate and your 4 death knells, after which you cast your finisher. Now you should still have pretty malleable crystals left over from that Courteous Greetings, and now you should be able to cast a double skill to restore 60 more essence. And now you can loop your supports again. Carlotta has a lot of moving parts to her kit, so it's very important that you're able to balance all of these out, including her cooldown reductions, her ultimate's defense shred, and then obviously her forte. That was quite the mouthful, I know, but now it's time to finally get on to Carlotta's build, starting with her weapons. Her best in slot weapon is obviously going to be the Last Dance. This is her signature weapon, providing 500 base attack and 72 crit damage, as well as 12% attack and up to 48% skill damage bonus. This is obviously going to be Carlotta's best in slot, as almost all of the damage that she deals counts as skills, so obviously this damage bonus will go a long way, and the attack and crit damage are definitely no slouch either. But that's not all for her options. She's also capable of using the Static Mist, which grants crit rate and a high base attack, and while its passive doesn't look too good, the energy regen is actually quite nice for her. There's also the Battle Pass weapon Thunderbolt. Now, while it does want you to use some basic attacks, you should be able to fit this into a rotation quite fast, especially if you swap in right before Jeji can cast her outro skill, and then use some basic attacks. You should have 100% uptime on this passive. There is also the Undying Flame, which will give a good amount of attack percent, as well as giving you more skill damage bonus after casting your intro skill. And like I said earlier, almost all of her damage counts as skills, so this will be an incredibly powerful effect for her. You can also use the Revelistic Jet. It grants a good amount of attack percent, but the passive will allow you to run one less ER roll, which will mean that you're able to have more spots for attack rolls. But if you already have enough ER in your echoes, this pick will become less good. Next up will be the Nova Burst. It will grant a good amount of attack percent on its passive, and also even more attack percent if you do consistent dodging. Now, you are going to have to do some random dashes in your rotation to make this work, but if you do make it work, you will get a good amount of attack percent for it. And then finally there's these Pistols 26, which are the craftable weapon. It gives a good amount of attack percent just innately, but it will also have an additional effect, that if the Resonator takes no damage, you will gain an attack percent increase. And considering the fact that Carlotta plays from range, it's actually not that hard to avoid taking damage. So for being a craftable option, this is actually weirdly good on her. So as opposed to most main DPS characters, Carlotta actually has quite a few options. Obviously the 5 stars are going to be the best, it's Wuthering Waves after all. But the fact that she has quite a few options in the 4-star catalog that aren't horrible is quite a surprise that's nice to see. But moving on to her echoes. Her best set is very obviously going to be the Frosty Resolve set. It's focused on Glacio and skill damage after all, and it was made with Carlotta in mind. Its 2-piece will give 12% resonance skill damage, and on its 5-piece, you will gain 18% skill damage after using a resonance skill, and an additional layer after using Resonance Liberation. While Carlotta might not have complete uptime on this, it will be a very good set for her, and it's obviously made with her in mind, so she is going to be the best user of it. The 5-piece Freezing Frost is actually a really bad set for Carlotta, as it does not allow her to use her main echo that she wants to use. So try to avoid this set as much as possible, but you can theoretically use it as a placeholder until you get the Frosty Resolve set. If you're looking for 2-piece combinations, the 2-piece Glacio and 2-piece attack percent will be her best, followed by 2-piece skill and 2-piece Glacio, and then finally by 2-piece skill and 2-piece attack. For her main echo, she wants to run the Sentry Construct, and it makes a lot of sense. It will automatically buff the user's Glacio and skill damage bonus by 12% each, which is obviously a very strong effect for Carlotta. For its echo effect, it will allow you to transform into the Sentry Construct, dealing 405% of attack as Glacio damage, and each time the Resonator casts Resonance Liberation, the echo gains Strike Capacitor, and once it maxed out, the echo skill cooldown will be reset, and using the echo skill will allow you to transform into the Sentry Construct once again, to dive bomb the enemies for an additional 405% of Glacio damage. As for her main stats, using a crit 4 cost with Glacio attack will be her best bet, but using Glacio and attack is not too far off, and if you're unable to get a double Glacio, settling for an attack piece is definitely not the worst case scenario. Now for Carlotta's teammates, she doesn't really have a lot of options. For her healer, she's obviously going to use Verena or Shorekeeper, and I doubt I have to explain more about why. But one more interesting pick is going to be Baizha, and while Baizha is not as good as Shorekeeper or Verena, she definitely has more value for Carlotta than she does for other characters. This is because with her S6, she is able to boost Glacio damage bonus, and while this doesn't make her on par with Verena or Shorekeeper, it definitely gets her very close. So if you need any team to use Baizha, Carlotta is the best one. Now for your second slot, you want to go with Zhezha. Now Zhezha is very obviously meant to be good with Carlotta, because she's able to boost Glacio and skill damage bonus. This is what Carlotta deals in, so Zhezha is by far the best option. But if you don't have her, you do have alternatives. First of all, Sanhua. Sanhua has an incredibly low field time and is an incredible user of the Moonlit Clouds set, as well as being able to boost attack percent with her S6. And her short field time will make it so that Sanhua is actually a very strong character to use with Carlotta. But those are the only two options I would actually go as far as to call good. Lumi and Tauchi are both able to boost resonant skill damage bonus, with Lumi being better. But their rotation is so long, and they don't have enough damage to compensate for this long rotation, which means that ultimately, they are going to fall behind the other options. But if you don't have another choice, they will be able to service you until you get an upgrade. Now, finally, moving on to Carlotta's sequences. Her first sequence will make it so whenever she casts her resonant skill Violent Aesthetics, her Glacio damage bonus will be increased by 25% for 15 seconds, and when the resonant skill is used on a target that was debuffed from the first hit, she will restore 30 additional essence. This will help with shortening down your rotation, but I don't think it's too great of a sequence since her rotation was not really the issue to begin with. Her second sequence will allow Carlotta to deal 25% additional crit damage to enemies with Disassociation, which is essentially every enemy that she's going to hit, let's be completely honest here. So it's just 25% crit damage. It is a good amount of stats, but I don't think it's worth the amount of pulls. Now the sequence 3 is quite a strong one. After casting her Ultra skill, Carlotta will do an additional hit of Glacio damage that's over 1000% of her attack, which is actually pretty strong. But the real deal here is the fact that her resonant skill will be increased by 70%, and this is not damage bonus, this is a multiplier increase, and considering her skill was already a very large amount of her damage, this is a very strong effect. Her sequence 4 will make it so that whenever Carlotta uses any of her heavy attacks, the damage bonus of resonant skills for the entire team will be increased by 25%. And while Zhezha or Shorekeeper are not able to take much advantage of this, this is excellent for Carlotta herself. Her S5 will make it so that the damage multiplier of any heavy attack you do will be increased by 40%. This also includes the damage of her enhanced heavy attack. So this is actually a pretty decent S5 compared to what it used to be. And then for the S6, the combined damage multiplier of Death Knell is increased by 169.5%. This is not the same as her S5 or S3, this is just a flat multiplier added on top. And whenever Death Knell hits an enemy, they will become unable to move for 1.5 seconds. So while this sequence is not the greatest when it comes to increasing Carlotta's damage output, it's definitely very strong for safety, as you essentially lock the enemy in place for the entire duration of Carlotta's Resonance Liberation. Since Carlotta is the first character of Renacida, she has a lot of hopes to fulfill, and I think she does, by having a very fun playstyle, giving us the first gun DPS in the game, and our first limited Glacio DPS. Carlotta breaks a lot of rules, which makes sense because her entire motif is about breaking glass. And I definitely think Kuro Games is trying to experiment more with playstyles, which I very much enjoy. I'm definitely going to be pulling for Carlotta. If you learned anything from this guide, be sure to let me know and leave a like and subscribe to the video. But if you still have questions, do not hesitate to leave a comment or even join my Discord to ask me directly. You could also ask me on Twitter if you want to. They're both linked in the description. But that'll be all from me. Peace.